Alrighty then.
Welcome back to Banging the Can, the Houston sports show that does not apologize for championship rings and tings, presented by Bolen Media. I am your host, Ross Bolen. And let's start today's show with some Stros positivity. The Astros have won 7 of their last 10 games, including 5 in a row, and all 3 in their away series against the Red Sox over the weekend, which is good because the Mariners have won 4 in a row, and as a result, we are still tied with Seattle atop the American League West. We've got a month and a half, essentially, of regular season baseball left. Every game matters. Every series matters. And you can't take your foot off the gas because October will be here before you know it. Fortunately, after a lackluster offensive start to August, the boys got back to scoring runs in Boston with an 8-4 win in the first game, 5-4 win in the second, and a dominant 10-2 drumming in the final game of the series on Sunday. Alex Bregman has been absolutely crushing the baseball, hitting his longest home run of the season in Game 2 against Boston, and then outdoing himself, hitting an even further bomb in Game 3. The 441-foot bomb he hit in Game 3 was actually the longest of his entire career, if I'm reading that correctly, which is obviously wild as hell. Breggy has found something. He's found something in his swing. And stop me if you've heard this before. He's caught fire late in the season when we need him most. Very happy for Bregs. Speaking of mashing, Yordan Alvarez is once again in a place where it's almost silly, borderline idiotic to pitch to him at all. Hitting at least 2 tanks that I can recall in the Red Sox series, in the same game, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. There was a point in Sunday's game where I swear to God, like 5 consecutive batters either hit the Green Monster or went over it. One of the pitchers, the Red Sox had some pitching issues during this series. If you didn't, like, their starter in the third game was out by the end of the first or second inning with a weird injury. It looked like I didn't go back and check, but it looked like his Achilles might have popped or something. It didn't look good. Point being, one of their pitchers just got hung out to dry. It was like hit after hit after hit after hit in one of these innings, and it was like solid contact, not some dribble shit, like blasts off the Green Monster over and over and over. It was really, really fun to watch for the Astros, not so much fun for the Red Sox fans in Boston, obviously. But yeah, very, very encouraging stuff from the offense, minus Jake Myers, who at one point had struck out in 6 consecutive at-bats, which is... it's not good. It's not good. I've seen a lot of talk about Jake over the past week, obviously, as he's struggled. It's kind of intensified. He's a very difficult guy to gauge. Like we've never really known what to make of Jake Myers as Astros fans. Baseball is a streaky sport, and he is definitely a streaky hitter. He's had moments this season where it looked like overall this might be his best season to date as a major leaguer. He shows flashes in the outfield where he's an unbelievable defender, but then he goes through these dry spells at the plate where he's completely and utterly useless, which happens to the best of us and the best of them, but he isn't one of the best of them, and I don't know. For some reason, it's easier to focus on his shittiness when it's there than with a lot of other guys. And 6 strikeouts in a row is obviously not what you want. I can't recall if that streak is continuing on to tonight's game or if it ended later in that Red Sox game. But 6 in a row, 6 strikeouts in a row is very, very bad. And I'm a Jake Myers fan. I think most Astros fans are. You don't hear his name come up much in the way of all the bitching and moaning that goes on the internet, unless he's striking out 6 consecutive times. He's just one of those guys. It's like we have this surplus of outfielders between him and McCormick, and he's not like quite good enough to be a mainstay, but then he has stretches where he is. Jake Myers is just a confusing player. But as I said, I'm a big fan. I hope he turns it around because we can't have that. Cannot have that. Everybody else hitting the cover off the ball, though. Very nice. Zach DeZenzo, the new guy, His fourth game since the call-up from AAA, which I believe was the second game of the Red Sox series. He hit his first Major League homer over the Green Monster. And if you haven't seen the clip, it was fantastic. When he gets back to the dugout, his first Major League home run, you expect the team to celebrate with him. And he walks in. Nobody has left the fence line. Nobody is looking at him. Nobody is paying attention to him. He takes his helmet off, sets it down, starts giving himself fake high fives because there's nobody coming to celebrate with him. And props to the rest of the Astros because they held on and they kept this prank going as long as they needed to for it to actually pay off. He gets almost down to the end of the bench, and finally, Yordan Alvarez turns around, gives him a big bear hug. Everybody comes and mauls him, and you could see the smile on Zach's face. But DeCinzo, who I didn't even, honest to God, I just missed it when I guess he got called up. I did not know this dude was on the team. I was just watching a game one day, and there was a dude named Zach DeCinzo batting, and I was like, who the fuck is that? And he's been solid. Not, nothing crazy to write home about yet, but solid. Solid production from DeCinzo so far. So good for him. Congratulations on the first Major League home run. That's a huge moment, obviously. Offense is back. For now. Pitching has also been on point. Kikuchi is still killing it, much to the dismay of the naysaying haters who flipped out when we traded for him at the deadline. Kikuchi has been incredibly solid thus far. He's yielded 2 runs in each of his 2 starts, got his first official win as an Astro last Wednesday against the Rangers. And no matter where you stood when the trade for Kikuchi was executed at the deadline, you have to feel very, very good about what we've seen from him so far. He has 19 strikeouts in 2 games. 19 strikeouts in 2 games. So the hope was that the Astros and their coaching and the pitching coaches in particular had identified something in Kikuchi that they thought they could work with and that they could get him to a place where he would be extremely productive as part of our pitching rotation. And it's not a big sample size, admittedly. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, you're all morons. Look how good Kikuchi is. I was so right. You were so wrong. We're so fucking, it's over. We're going to win the World Series. This was the piece we needed. I'm not saying that. There's a lot of baseball yet to be played, small sample size, but so far, about as good as it could have possibly been. I mean, this has been great. And he's fun to watch. He's got good stuff. Good stuff, Kikuchi. Speaking of strikeouts, Spencer Arrighetti has also continued to impress. Keeps taking steps in the right direction, which is exactly what you want from a rookie. In his win on Saturday, Arrighetti became the first rookie in American League history to have 12-plus strikeouts in back-to-back starts. He had 13 on Saturday, 12 in his prior start. That's the first rookie in American League history. Never been done. Back-to-back games with 12 consecutive starts, or 12 consecutive strikeouts in back-to-back starts. Incredible. So the Astros, once again, pulled a potentially invaluable piece to the pitching rotation out of their asses, and God knows we need it because of all the injuries which have continued to plague this team. Speaking of which, Justin Verlander made his first rehab start in Sugarland since his neck injury in June. God, June was a shitty month. But Verlander finally makes a rehab start, and as he said himself, Verlander checked all the boxes he needed to check in that start for the Space Cowboys. He felt good. He looked good. He will probably have one more minor league outing before returning to the Astros, hopefully in the next week and a half, 2 weeks. We can hope to see Verlander back in an Astros jersey. Getting Verlander back will be, it should go without saying, it will be huge for this team. It's not just his steady presence as an ace. It's his veteran leadership in the dugout and just knowing, it's like he's one of those guys just knowing you've got him and got him healthy lifts everybody up a little bit. It's a little boost for the whole squad. So Verlander on his way back, finally. Unfortunately, Luis Garcia is once again dealing with right elbow soreness on his journey back from Tommy John surgery, which was in May of last year, 2023, I think. Look, I was really excited to get Luis Garcia back, so I'm kind of butthurt about the way this is going now, and I'm just going to have to go back to pretending he doesn't exist until they tell us he's all the way back, which is seeming more and more likely will not be this season. Like probably next year, if we had to guess. So, Tommy John is one of those things, I think because Verlander bounced back so strong from his most recent Tommy John that we kind of set that as the bar, what we expect for these guys. But as we've seen with Lance McCullers Jr. and now Luis Garcia, like coming back from Tommy John surgery is not easy. It's really challenging, and it takes some guys longer than others. Some guys are never quite right again. It just depends. Everybody's body is different. But yeah, so that bummer about Luis Garcia. According to Joe Espada, Kyle Tucker, praise be to God, seems to have turned a corner finally in his recovery and is, quote, getting close, end quote, to running the bases soon, which could indicate he'll be back with the team by the end of the month. Now, it still scares the living hell out of me that they're having to say he's getting close to running the bases soon. Running the bases is probably the first thing you need to be able to do to play baseball, I guess. So it just doesn't, it's not, I'm not going to get excited yet. I'm just not going to get excited yet. All I'm doing is providing an update here. Kyle Tucker maybe turned a corner, maybe getting close to running the bases soon. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that he'll be back with the Astros before the month of August comes to an end in the next couple of weeks. But I'm just going to continue to think that's not going to happen, and maybe we see him. All I want is Kyle Tucker back in full form by the time the postseason is upon us. That's what I want. So I want him to have a few games at least before the regular season ends to get his shit together, to get his timing back, right? So, King Tuck is likely going to need a rehab assignment or multiple simulated games before the Astros activate him from the injured list because he's been out since June fucking 7th. I guess the injury technically occurred on like June 3rd. But that's 2 full months and change now that we've been without Kyle Tucker. Almost the same amount of time for Justin Verlander. Those are arguably 2 of the 4 most important players on the team, and we've done spectacularly without them, which is not a testament to how they're invaluable. It's more of just like a testament to the perseverance that this team has showed during what was not a good time, injuries-wise. All things considered, the Astros continue to show they are not to be written off even after a sluggish start to the season. They won their 8th consecutive silver boot against the Rangers, which we're at the point now where it's like, I don't even care when we win it. I would just be pissed if we lost it. And considering the way things unfolded in the ALCS against the Rangers last season, this silver boot did feel slightly more important. Like we had that it came down to the final game. And I actually was locked in for that. Like I was like, fuck, we got to get this. We got to make sure we don't give up the silver boot. So 8 seasons in a row, we have won that now. Swept the Red Sox, tied with the Mariners for first place in the division. They're getting healthier, Verlander coming back, Kyle Tucker gaining the ability to run again, possibly. The dudes they brought up or traded for to fill in the gaps in the pitching rotation have been getting the job done. You're seeing Arrighetti do shit that literally has never been done before, which is huge. The offense, while still streaky, has been firing on all cylinders for at least 5-6 games in a row now. Good things. All good things. Mazel, mazel. Tonight, they start a 3-game series against the Tampa Bay Rays with Framber Valdez on the bump. Then it's back to Houston for a 3-game series against the pathetic Chicago White Sox. And finally, another 3-game series at home against the Red Sox, who they just swept. So all of that before entering a much tougher part of the schedule to close out August. So they got to take care of business in these 3 series that we are looking at coming up here at the end of August. And if they can take care of business in those 3, yet another very impressive and productive month for the boys. Huzzah. And I have to note, I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to rub anybody's nose in it. I'm not being a hater. I'm simply noting in 32 at-bats so far for the Toronto Blue Jays, Joey Loperfido is batting .125 and has struck out an appalling 16 times. That's half of his at-bats so far as a Blue Jay. He has struck out. Now, I'm rooting for Joey. I like Joey. I did not want to trade Joey. I will remind everyone I was upset too. I was just also being rational about it. I hope he crushes it in Toronto. But I'm just saying, everyone who was freaking out about trading him, this is exactly why you wait and see before you start staking your sports take reputation on unproven shit. I'm not painting Joey Loperfido as a bad baseball player. I'm simply saying there were things in his stats, strikeout rate at the top of the list that were alarming, and clearly the front office was willing to take a chance on letting him go for a reason, and that was part of the reason. So Joey Lopes, so far, up north of the border in Canada, not so hot. Not so hot. Are you a baseball player in a dugout full of guys speaking different languages than you? You need today's sponsor, Babbel. The best way to learn a language? Immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that is with Babbel. Be a better you with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel is designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. Babbel's courses are incredibly convenient. I've tried using them to regain my grasp on Spanish. Me llamo Ross, and they make it super easy to learn how to do all the basics like order food or ask for directions or speak to merchants or joke with your teammates in the dugout without having to consult language apps. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester of college, which is nuts. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold, plus all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal just for the can bangers. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription only for the can bangers at babbel.com/BTC. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/BTC, spelled B-A-B-B-E-L. BABBEL.com/BTC. Rules and restrictions may apply. Let's talk a little Texans, huh? In what was technically their first preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Texans looked pretty ready for the regular season in a 20-12 win. The game against the Bears was the Hall of Fame game. Technically wasn't a preseason game. It's like a pre-preseason game. Anyway, played the Steelers this past weekend. Saturday, I think it was. C.J. Stroud. Best moment of the game was C.J. Stroud hitting Tank Dell for a 34-yard touchdown, which was just incredible to see these two connecting on the football field again. Between the way Tank Dell went down, I guess it was like at the midway point of last season, maybe a little bit past it, when he looked like he was well on his way to having like perhaps the best rookie wide receiver season in the history of the franchise. Between the way he went down with an injury and how like just so unlucky the way that injury unfolded, like he got like rolled over on in the fucking pile at the goal line. Between that and the shooting that occurred this offseason where he was hit by a goddamn bullet, and all those things considered, and just, you saw the relationship that C.J. Stroud and Tank Dell developed. The fact that C.J. Stroud, after being drafted by the Texans, is the guy who said, go get Tank Dell. Him being a University of Houston guy, all these things, it makes the story pretty special. I mean, our wide receiving core on the Texans is, without argument, the best we've ever had. I mean, there was a point there where we had like late stage Andre Johnson with young rookie DeAndre Hopkins, which was comparable, but like we're 4 or 5 guys deep at this point. With Stephon Diggs on the squad, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. I mean, we've got a lot of receiving talent. A lot. Tank Dell, you could still argue, maybe the most important factor in the receiving corps. So he catches a 34-yard touchdown, dodges a couple tackles on the way to the end zone. Very cool moment for him and C.J. Stroud. C.J. only threw like 4 passes. I think he was 2 for 4. Starters obviously did not play all that much, but it was cool seeing them, and particularly seeing C.J. and Tank in the new uniforms, which I got to say, look really sharp. And we are just under a month away from the first regular season game in what has got to be the most anticipated season in Houston Texans history. It's got to be. I mean, maybe one or two others were comparable in terms of hype, but not really, especially not in terms of national hype. Like, we've got a lot of people picking us to make the AFC Championship game. We got people picking us to make the Super Bowl after what they saw last season. It's going to be a tough one. You know, we've talked about it before with C.J. Stroud, your sophomore season, when guys have had a look at you and they've had time to develop a defense around you and your playing style and see what you bring to the table and then combat it. It's a different animal than year one, where you're kind of a surprise to everybody and nobody really knows what to make of you yet. But I'm very, very excited to cover the Texans in this season on their way to the Super Bowl. Obviously, that's what we're doing, right? We're going to the Super Bowl. That's what I'm being told. Random Texans news. Country singer Luke Combs performed at NRG Stadium on Saturday. And if you haven't seen the clip yet, just search Luke Combs Texans on Google or your search engine of choice or social media platform of choice, and you'll see a clip of him bringing C.J. Stroud, Ka'imi Fairbairn, our kicker, and owner Cal McNair on stage during the concert at NRG Stadium to shotgun beers, which... you know what that is, right? You know what shotgunning a beer... I don't have time to explain what shotgunning a beer is if you don't know. But the point is, C.J. Stroud did not partake because he's focused on winning football games. I don't really know how to feel. I don't drink, just full disclosure. I don't drink. I quit in 2017. There's a fine line between C.J. Stroud and Russell Wilson in terms of... over-the-top cheesiness, and I'm trying to avoid I'm hoping to avoid CJ skewing over into Russell Wilson territory, which has not happened so far. But going on stage at a Luke Combs concert and being the one of the three that, I don't remember if Ka'imi Fairbairn shotgun one, but Cal McNair certainly did. Being the guy who doesn't shotgun a beer in a white cowboy hat, it just gave me a little bit of Russell Wilson vibes. That's all I'm saying. I don't even like that I'm saying it, honestly. I just wish I could take all this back right now, but it's too late. I've said it into the microphone, and you could be asking yourself, Ross, why don't you just edit it out after the fact? The show isn't live. No, I'm too real for that. But like I said, CJ did not partake. Cal McNair, however, did. And watching Cal McNair attempt to shotgun a beer, which it looked like he has perhaps never done before in his life, was truly something to behold. You ever shotgun beers with a group and like there's one dude who you're like, I'm not confident you know what you're doing. And then they dump 80% of the beer onto the ground instead of into their mouth. That was Cal. He didn't do it wasn't the best shotgunning performance I've ever seen. Very funny though, all in all. Props to Cal for trying. His rebrand, our owner, Cal McNair, from Tommy Boy to Houston's Golden Boy, is something that will be studied in marketing and public relations classes for generations to come, or at least it should be, because it is truly. We're past the point now where I'm just like shocked by how he's been able to turn it around. Not only the team, but like the fan base's perception of him as an owner and a man. To now, I'm just happy because that's stunk. Hating your owner for a few years and asking him to sell the team is not a place that any sports fan wants to be. Having a hateable owner or even an unlikable owner is one of the worst things that can happen to you as a sports fan. Happens all of the fucking time, by the way. Super common, unfortunately. But getting to enjoy, root for, laugh with, and at Cal McNair has made being a Texans football fan all the more fun. Just knowing that the dude who's getting paid off all this, the billionaire fucking goofball who owns the team, isn't shitty, unlikable, and potentially have like a learning disability. It's huge because for a while there, I was like, this guy is the absolute worst owner in sports. And it turns out now he just needed to start listening to his wife more. Shout out to Hannah McNair, who was not on stage, and I wish she had been. Anyway, that was that Luke Combs concert. I'm not a Luke Combs guy. Apparently, he's a bigger deal than I realized. But yeah, cool to see the Texans doing something like that in NRG. You know, when we're still a month out from the season, I feel like it's okay to have some fucking around time still. Get the people excited, get the people going. Like I said, very much looking forward to Texans football. 2024 Summer Olympic Games ended on Sunday. Incredible event. But if you're not a person who watches the Olympics, if you're like, I don't give a fuck about like ping pong or synchronized swimming or, you know, competitive diving, you're missing out. I'm just telling you. For whatever reason, I got lucky and I was like raised one of these people who you always watch the Olympics no matter what. The Winter Olympics, not so much. I have a harder time getting into that for some reason. I still tune in, just much, much less so than I do with the Summer Olympics, where pretty much if I had a free hour, I was watching the Olympics. I watched a lot of Olympics. I even watched the breakdancing shit that went viral. That was the most cringeworthy shit. I don't know. Just as an aside, growing up in Houston, going to Westside High School, they had a very serious breakdancing squad at my school called Inertia, and they were really fucking good. And they would go compete at like these national competitions and whatnot. The point being, I saw a lot of really good breakdancing in high school. And some of the dudes and girls that I saw in high school throwing down were a hell of a lot better than these fuckers I saw at the Olympics, like the girl from Australia. One of the funniest things I've ever seen. Like, I'm still watching the clips back from that chick, the Australian chick whose name is slipping my mind. But anyway, I digress. My point is this. Watch the Olympics. 20 million people watched the U.S. men's basketball final against France. That's almost double the amount of people who watched the NBA finals. It was very, very, very cool. Now, that one's obvious. Like, obviously, you tune in for the men's basketball final, right? But there was a lot of shit that I did not think would be that... Ping pong included. I watched a lot of ping pong. Shit that I did not think would be that cool. That was incredibly fun. And it's the world stage. Like, there's not a ton of examples of sporting events where it's everybody in the world or most of the people in the world represented, or the best of the best in the world are all represented. The Olympics is obviously probably the biggest example. This is the reason I love the World Cup. I'm a huge fan of the World Cup, even though I don't give that much of a shit about international soccer outside of the World Cup. I'm not one of these guys that tunes in for Premier League on Saturdays. I just can't get into it. I don't have a team. I don't know how the scheduling works. There's too many factors that contribute to me not being a regular soccer fan or football. But World Cup comes around, I'm locked the fuck in. And that's all the way through, even after the U.S. gets knocked out, which we always do earlier than we thought we would. The Olympics are incredible. They're so much fun. The next games in 2028 will be in Los Angeles, so we'll be the host nation, which will be really, really cool. It's been since Atlanta, I think. It's been like over 20 years, I want to say, since we hosted the Summer Games. Maybe we've hosted a Winter Games between now and then, but anyway, LA is the next host. The Olympics are awesome. You should absolutely be watching them. If for whatever reason you have never watched the Olympics or you just don't get that into it, I highly recommend you throw yourself into it next time. Just jump in with both feet. Watch as much shit as you can. Watch the random shit. It is hilarious, if not extremely entertaining, or a combination of those two things. Pretty much the whole way through. I had a blast. I'm bummed the Olympics are over. Today when I got to work and was like, usually when I'm writing the show, putting the show together, making the outline, I'll have some sports on in the background. And over the last 2 weeks, it's been the Olympics nonstop. And then today I came in and was like, oh, shit. I got to put on Pat McAfee again because there's just nothing else. There's no sports going on right now. So we're back into the dry season, which just baseball, but we got 12 days until college football. So hold on tight. We're almost through the toughest part of the year sports-wise. The Olympics were a huge help. Soon, football come. Football come soon. Come, football soon. That's the 3 ways you can say that. That's all 3 of them. That'll do it for today's show. Remember, every episode of Banging the Can is available in full video on youtube.com/@bangingthecan for those of you who would prefer to watch rather than just listen. Obviously, we are on all the major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us 5 stars. Rate and review the show very quickly. Write a couple of sentences in a review saying why you like Banging the Can. That would be extremely helpful to us. If you're listening on Spotify, click the little rating thing. Give us 5 stars. That means a lot. If you're watching on YouTube, mash the subscribe button. Hit the fucking like button. Leave a comment. Do all those things. Those things help us a lot. On that note, please share the most unapologetic Houston sports show in existence with your friends and family. Follow us on social media at Banging the Can on all of the social platforms. Support our sponsors. Today we had Babbel. Babbel.com/BTC to get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription. Check out our other shows here at Bolen Media, which is my little startup here. We're run out of Austin, Texas. We've got the Ross Bolen podcast, which is my personal podcast where we talk about like insane headlines and crazy stuff to Wikipedia when you're high and cool animals and random news and music and all basically just whatever I feel like talking about that day. Oysters, Clams, and Cockles is another one of my shows where we cover the latest and greatest in TV and movies. We just finished coverage of House of the Dragon Season 2. That was a lot of fun. Now we're doing The Bear Season 3, which obviously came out over a month ago, but it was in the middle of House of the Dragon season for us, so we're just now getting to doing The Bear. And then after that, we're doing The Penguin. I think we're going to cover The Penguin. We're going to cover Dune Messiah, or whatever the fuck it's called on HBO, coming up at the end of the year. Silo Season 2 on Apple TV. Plus, we cover a ton of good TV, all the best TV shows, great movies as well. Oysters, Clams, and Cockles. Check it out. And if you're an F1 fan, F1 season, summer break will be over before you know it. Then we'll be racing again every weekend. And Bolen Media's premier F1 programming is called Formula Bone. You can follow it, find it, watch it, enjoy it at youtube.com/@FormulaBone. At Formula Bone with a B as in bone on all of the major social media platforms. You can listen on the podcast platforms if you prefer as well. It's a little preview and recap of almost every single race in the season, brought to you by the host, Jared J-Bone Borislow, who's another one of the Bolen Media content creators over here in my camp. And yeah, if you love F1, you'll love Formula Bone. Check out Formula Bone wherever your podcasts are played, or here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Enjoy. I'm Ross Bolen. You can follow me on Twitter or X and Instagram at WRBolen. I'll be back probably next week. Hopefully the Astros have another good, productive week here. Series starts tonight against the Rays. Framber on the bump. Good stuff. We're doing it. We're really doing it, folks. Until next time, H-Town, stay down.